Hello, welcome to today's edition of Juicy the Numbers, your movies and TV podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Tracy.
And I'm Corwin Miller.
And this weekend, Corwin and I watched 2007's There Will Be Blood. And I lost the year, but I think it was 2017's Beautiful Boy. Corwin, 2018? Corwin, are you ready to talk about him?
I am. I was honestly kind of, because we keep, questioning what movies we say we're going to pick. And I was like 90% certain that you knew it was Beautiful Boy and I knew it was Beautiful Boy. And that's what we both mutually agreed on. There was that 10% there that was like, that would be really fucking funny if we watched two different movies. So I wasn't going to bring it up, but we got it right.
Yeah, I was like very so I don't know if you listened to the last episode, but like we had both forgotten to even pick them, and then we both panic picked them at the end. And then I walked away from that episode thinking to myself, all right, good, we snuck him in under the wire. And then didn't think to like retain what they just were.
Right.
And then I had a existential crisis like Friday or Saturday or some shit. And texted Corwin what the fuck his pick was. So it's good. It's good. We're moving and grooving over here. Which one of these two do you want to talk about first?
Once again, I just finished There Will Be Blood like 10 minutes before we sat down to record.
All right.
I think that would be the fresh one in my mind.
Cool. Let's start with that. There Will Be Blood, 2007, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dano, probably most get the most screen time anyway, people that we would know. This film had a estimated $25 million budget. It grossed worldwide $76 million, so a raging success. This film was nominated for 8 Oscars, winning 2 of them. It won for Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role for Daniel Day-Lewis and Best Cinematography for Robert Elswit. It was also nominated for Best Motion Picture of the Year, Best Achievement in Directing, Best Writing Adapted Screenplay, Best Achievement in Film Editing, Best Achievement in Art Direction, and Best Achievement in Sound Editing. Corwin, what'd you think?
I enjoyed it. This is different from the past couple movies we've watched because I have seen this in full multiple times before viewing this. It's always been a movie that I've enjoyed and thought was beautifully done, but has never really been one of those favorites that I go back to. I kind of, while watching it, it kind of reminded me of The Irishman. This is an epic that I'm very glad I'm experiencing. I can appreciate it in real time, but it's not going to be one that I'm ever going to sit down and be like, what do I want to watch? Tonight's a There Will Be Blood night. It's something you experience every couple of years that I'm probably not going to go back and think on, but is still something I can, honestly say was an enjoyable movie.
This is one of my favorite movies.
Really?
I love this movie. Love it. It's got so I'll address a few things. This is Irishman-like only in that it is also long.
It is very long, very drawn out.
But the thing is, I actually find the pacing of this to be so well done. And it reminds me in a lot of aspects of like old-timey filmmaking combined with modern filmmaking. You see a lot of like Jonathan Huston style stuff crammed in with a lot more like modern techniques with the cinematography and art direction. And plus that coupled with Daniel Day-Lewis's fucking superb acting is just amazing. I treasure this movie for those reasons, but like you said with The Irishman, this is not a movie I usually go back to frequently, only because there is not a shred of happiness in it, and it's long. And those two things make me like not want to watch it all the time, but I haven't seen it like in a handful of years. So getting the chance to rewatch it was actually wonderful. I'm so glad I sat down and had the opportunity to force myself to sit down and watch it, because I was reminded how much I fucking love this fucking movie. So let's get into it a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
what's the first note you wrote down, just out of curiosity?
Um, the first note I had was just discussing how immediately it jumped out how much this is going towards the show don't tell just mindset. The first 15, I checked the time. The first 15 minutes of the film doesn't have a single word of spoken
Yep.
dialogue.
Yep. 14 and a
Yet,
half minutes. I did the same thing. Yeah.
nice. But you know exactly what's going on. You know exactly where he is in his life and the problems he's facing, how things are stacked against him, what he has going for him, what he has going against him. You know so much about the character, about his dedication, his work ethic, his just absolute craze about oil. I feel like that could be worded better. It's just he has this unbearing focus on what he's doing. And in 14 and a half minutes, I feel like you know just enough or just the same amount about this character as you do about an hour and a half into this. And there are some jumps here that you have with character development that I have notes on, but in the grand scheme of things, 90% of plain view you have in those 14 minutes.
Yeah, I will say one thing that I think makes a good setup of what his character is going to be like is in the beginning of the film. He doesn't start off looking for oil. He starts off looking for stones, precious metals as like a miner, and then switches to oil when he like accidentally discovers it. Because the thing is, I don't think this man gave a fuck what he was doing as long as it was making him money, and he
Right.
just happened to like find money under his feet. For anyone unaware, Daniel Day-Lewis, the lead actor in this film, is a method actor, which means he stays in character for the entirety of a shoot, which is so much more than needs to be done. But gotta love him for it. So my first note here was Dan Day-Lewis definitely excavated that entire hole.
Yeah, he you could tell that you could tell there's a lot of moisture and a lot of liquids going on, which I guess is meant to represent the oil that is further down. I guarantee you that's just his sweat.
I actually have a note in here that just says this movie is fucking sweaty.
Yeah.
'Cause and that's like and that's maybe like a little bit of the John Hughes. It's very Sergio Leone having the like just the fucking caked on dirt and in this movie oil and sweat on the character. I just absolutely love. Um,
Mhm.
what are some other? I'm trying to guide this discussion in a certain way without getting to the things I want to get to too soon. So, what are
All
some
right.
other standout moments for you in this?
So for those of you that don't know me personally, which is 99.9% of you that listen,
Hi, mom.
um, I'm up. I majored in essentially energy business in college, which at Penn State focused a lot on oil drilling, natural gas drilling. So we had a lot of history classes or history lessons on early drilling techniques, early drilling styles, the history behind how the oil boom happened in the Midwest. And watching them go about the stuff that you learn about is just a really cool visual because when you learn it, you're getting fucking textbook pictures and grainy ass film that is just not well done and you don't really get to have that immersion into the history of it. And I think being able to see it in as uh, beautifully made film like this is really cool to see. And especially when they have that first oil derrick that catches on fire, and spoiler alert, uh, deafens Plainview's son. Um, the techniques behind both the building, the drilling, and then putting out of the fires was all stuff that I had studied on for multiple weeks, throughout certain semesters, and it was really cool to see. Just really well done.
I want to get back to HW,
Right.
the son character, in a moment. What did you think of the score? Because that's something that I didn't really remember from previous viewings. Because it's funny, as much of like a music person as I am, I don't really pay too much attention to most scores. At least I didn't. Nowadays, I'm much more attentive to it, which has been odd. But anyway, it's very horror movie like.
Yes.
To the point where Kel was actually asking me if this was a horror movie when it first started, because it's dark and it's grimy and it's grungy, and the score really sets it up as one. And I
Especially,
think thematically, in a lot of ways, it is like it's meant to show the corruption and the dark side of all this stuff, the way a horror movie would. But it isn't. It isn't one.
mhm.
What are you gonna say?
Especially coming from The Shining, that stood
Yeah,
out really early on. Just how the score was this really tense backdrop to what was going on. And I didn't really get any horror vibes from it. Maybe just because I've seen it when it came out, and it's just I've known what this movie is for so long. But I thought it was really additive to the tone of just how fucking crazy Plainview is, and just the dedication, and just I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but just absolute brute focus and determination.
tenacity.
Yeah, tenacity is a good one. I really liked it. It wasn't something that, like you said, like it wasn't overly noticeable. It didn't overpower really any scenes, but it was something that was a really nice addition.
If you had to pick someone to be the good guy in this movie, who would you pick? Because obviously Plainview is terrible. Um,
Yeah.
Paul Dano, the church leader, isn't exactly a great dude in of his own
Hmm.
right for a myriad of reasons. Um, there's a bunch of side characters who don't do anything terrible, but some that do anything fantastic. Like, what are you rooting for in
I
this movie to happen?
feel like it has to be HW, just as he is the least shitty person. Like he
I was
doesn't
actually
do
thinking the same
anything
thing.
bad, but he's not, overtly the protagonist. He's not a focal point of the movie for roughly half of it, and it's not like there's this climax where he is fulfilled in any way, or he's not a typical protagonist. I don't feel comfortable calling him a protagonist because he isn't the focal point of the movie, but he's the only one that really wasn't a piece of shit or just a throwaway character.
I agreed, and I now want to transition this conversation into my take on HW.
Okay.
Um, and this is where you might say I will be stretching a little bit. Um, I think, upon having now seen this movie, very recently, that it is. I think the church elements and biblical elements are fairly obvious, but I never picked up the HW character the way that I think I did in this past viewing, where he's Jesus Christ in a lot of ways, isn't he?
Hmm.
And I think that
Go
he
on.
really gets treated in that way, pretty outright at some points. And I wanna I wanna make an argument at some point that Daniel Plainview is like Old Testament God, harsh and mean and focused, um, and HW is more like a Jesus New Testament kind of dude, because it's tough to formulate all the thoughts, but like I oh, sorry. All right. So let's start from the top here. I'm going to be jumping around in my religious metaphors a little bit, but now this isn't necessarily like, actually it's not at all Jesus and God related, but the fact that he is taken by Daniel, and he uses the metaphor later on in the movie when he's talking to older HW, like a babe in a basket. That's straight up Moses,
Mhm.
right? And he raises him to, like, kind of know what's going on with the whole family business. This is understanding what it means to be a deity. But I think there comes a like he doesn't kill HW, but he seriously hurts HW,
Mhm.
right? Which leads him to send him away, which feels like the death of
Multiple
Jesus in a
times.
lot of ways. Well, like when he sends him to San Francisco
Right.
and then brings him back, that all felt like kind of like Easter resurrection kind of thing. and it comes directly off the back of Daniel going to church and having this whole like I'm going to use air quotes here, religious experience there. And HW ends up being kind of a martyr for the cause in a lot of ways that like Jesus was in the Bible. And then he goes on to wanting to start up his own new thing, kind of like Jesus starting Christianity later on. And he really is the only not shit character in the entirety of the movie, to the point where you could probably even say he is the only good person in the movie. And I think that there's a lot of like belief and faith put on his back in the way that like you would see some things coming from the Bible in that way.
I see where you're coming from, and
It's
I
tough. I
don't
know
necessarily disagree with you, but I can't say that that's something that jumped out to me. I don't want to disagree and say I can't see it, because I can. It's just, if that is the symbolism Anderson was going for, fucking power to him, because that would be, I guess it would be very on point. It's just
I kind of
What do
like
you do?
wrote down some of this haphazardly because I came to the decision I was going to try to make this correlation very late into the film viewing. So I bet if you gave me, time and energy, which I don't feel like having, I could come up with more. I do have a second thing I thought HW stood for, which I think would be a little bit easier to capture.
Okay.
Um, Kind of just he's like a microcosm and a metaphor for what Daniel Plainview is doing to this town. He picks it
Mhm.
up. It's not his. He is going to try to bring it up, and he ends up just fucking ruining it for his own gain. Because like he picks up HW because some dude that he worked with died, and it's a child, and then he ended up using HW basically as a marketing tool. He didn't fucking care. He was just
Mm-mm.
so he could say it was a family business and all that shit. Um, and then once HW became no longer useful for him, he sent him away. And much like once anyone became not useful to him in this movie, he sent them away, including the town. Um, so I think a lot of the ways that he treated HW was just the ways he treated everything
As a tool, just to,
as a
you
tool.
know, better himself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely what I got from it. I wouldn't say that there's a single action he takes in the movie that is for the betterment of others. Um, Even with the baptism scene, that really stood out to me. I have a note here basically saying that quote unquote exorcism scene that we see Paul Dano's character have, which I now am remembering, was preceding this baptism, but that was probably the closest to horror that I saw in the movie, and thought it was very much on par with the stair scene in The Shining. Um, Both Jack Nicklaus and Paul Dano's acting and just transformation of character on screen, just right in front of your eyes, was eerily similar. But that baptism scene, the way he was just laughing along as it went, and basically, in my mind, him realizing that this was the final straw to completely control these people, and to just be able to just unilaterally take everything he needs from them, and just this was the final straw, was just really jumped out to me. Um, it's almost like he was laughing at the end of that baptism, just laughing in the face of the old man and Paul Dano's character.
I think he actually mumbles to himself at the end of it. I'm
Hmm.
gonna build that fucking pipeline or something, some
Yeah,
shit like that.
I definitely
Um,
remember hearing that. Yeah.
It was also a hilarious series of lines because, like, you got Paul Dano shouting there, like, "Say you want the blood," and you got you got Daniel Day-Lewis like, "I want the blood. Give me the blood. I want the blood." And it's fucking a hilarious juxtaposition.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously meant to show that this dude doesn't give a fuck about this. He was
No.
doing it strictly as a means to an end.
When it first started, I was like, okay, like this could be. There was like a split second of just like, maybe this is something that he's just going on board with, and it felt weird because it just didn't fit. And then immediately it was like, oh no, this guy is just fucking with
Was there anything else that stood out to you thematically about this film?
you. Not. I'd have to think about it a little bit. Um, it's just the greed aspect of it, just completely destroying a man over the course of this film. Um, I kind of wanted to think more on that point, but I just found that it's hard to say that greed is what destroyed Plainview throughout this movie because, again, he kind of doesn't have much of a narrative or a character development arc because he's pretty much this guy from the beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
The only difference
and
is in the
it's hard
beginning
to
he
say it
has no
just
money. At the end, he has
right.
all money and is a raging alcoholic.
Oh yeah. Watching him drink that bottle of what I assume is vodka, that clear bottle of
Yeah.
alcohol, I couldn't read the label, went from wow, he's waking up still drunk, okay, he's drinking, to oh my god, that amount of alcohol would fucking kill me. And he is just putting it back like a motherfucker.
Shit
I
was
know,
ridiculous.
I know you. Yeah, forget it.
Um, so do you know anything about the backstory to this film?
That it was loosely based off of Upton Sinclair's Oil.
Furthermore, Daniel Plainview is most prominently based off of an actual person, California oil tycoon Edward L. Doheny. Both were from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Both were employed by the Geological Survey and worked in Kansas. Both had tried a hand at mining before going into the oil business. Both had worked with a fellow prospector named H.B. Ailman. Um, as for other Plainview Doheny connections, the bowling alley scene was filmed at Greystone Manor, a California estate that Doheny had built as a present for his son. Also, the speech he gives in there, the milkshake speech,
Mhm.
is based on transcripts that Edward L. Doheny had said to Congress in regards to the Teapot Dome scandal.
Um, are you familiar with the Teapot Dome scandal?
Yes.
Would you like to enlighten us?
All right, we're gonna dig back into high school um fucking history class here. But for anyone unaware, it was a bribery scandal under the Harding administration from 1921 to 1923. There was a lot of what are they? What was the thing they called? Spoils of something. A
What
spoils
do you mean?
system, basically in which the people who won elections just gave money to their fucking friends, um, because there was no real checks and balances on power in terms of dishing out money. So for
Wow, that just
1921,
sounds so familiar.
I know, isn't that crazy? So Secretary of the Interior, I'm reading this shit straight from Wikipedia at this point because it's going to be easier for me. Secretary of the Interior Albert Bacon Fall had leased Navy petroleum reserves in Teapot Dome, Wyoming, and two locations in California to private oil companies at low rates without competitive bidding. The leases were subject of a seminal investigation by Senator Thomas J. Walsh. Convicted of accepting bribes from the oil companies, Fall became the first presidential cabinet member to go to prison, and no one was convicted of paying the bribes. Um, Before Watergate, Teapot Dome was regarded as the greatest and most sensational scandal in American politics and damaged the reputation of the Harding administration, which was already severely damaged by controversial handling of the Great Railroad Strike of 1922 and Harding's veto of the bonus bill in 1922. And Congress passed subsequent legislation enduring to this day, giving subpoena power to the House and Senate for review of tax records of any U.S. citizen without regard to elected or appointed position, nor subject to White House interference. So there you have it, the
Yeah.
Teapot Dome scandal.
Yeah, so in short, basically it was taxpayer money going directly to oil men that were close with the politicians in charge of handing out that money.
Yeah, in all like yeah,
As loans
bribes.
without any chance or any expectation of being repaid.
And Lisa is a huge thing that gets brought up in the movie because
mhm.
one of the key, I'll say, moments in the film in terms of Daniel Plainview's trajectory monetarily is him turning down the offer from Standard Oil to sell his three main what do they call them, holes, oil
The
mines,
Wells, yeah.
okay, because they were like, you can't get your own fucking pipeline system, and he was like, bitch, yes I can, and turned down $1 million fucking dollars, which is a
So much
stupid
money
amount of
back then. Yeah.
um do you have any guess as to how much money that was?
Um, I would say that is probably like 2 billion, $2.5 billion.
25 billion,
Wow.
I think, if my zeros are all right. Otherwise it's 2.5 billion. Hold on.
Um,
10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. Yep, $25 billion.
that's yeah, that's fucking insane.
He was just like, nah, fuck you, pieces of
Don't
shit.
want it. Yeah, don't want
Get
it.
out of here.
Which part of me gets it, especially that's a big part of his character is he's gonna do it himself, and he made that point. He's like, well, if I take your money, yeah, I'll be rich. You're saying I should spend more time with my son. I'm not gonna do that because dude's just fucking useless to me. I don't give a shit about this kid. But he was like, what am I gonna do once I take this money? And I gotta hand it to him. I agreed with him. It's like, you know what? Yeah, you could be real rich, and what are you gonna have to show for it?
Like, whatever you want. Build a bigger bowling alley in your basement. Would you ever build a bowling alley in your basement?
No, I suck at bowling. You know
It's
what?
also
I'll
just
take
like,
that back. If I was rich enough where if I was like Jeff Bezos rich, sure, I'd build a fucking bowling alley in my basement. Why not? But if I had reasonable wealthy money, nah, never.
yeah, no, I don't, I just, if I was to pick a sport thing to put in my basement, it wouldn't be bowling.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd put an Olympic-sized swimming pool in my basement before I put in 2 bowling lanes.
Yeah, fuck that shit. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have here in my notes worth bringing up. Um, Not really. Do you think I had written down here as a question because I couldn't think of it at the time and haven't revisited my notes since I finished watching the movie.
Mhm.
But when Daniel Plainview kills the guy pretending to be his brother,
Yeah.
did you find any symbolism in that? I wrote down Cain and Abel question mark, but I couldn't make it work in a way that I thought
Uh,
meant anything.
I mean, I'm not very familiar with Cain and Abel just because I've never read the Bible directly. I just know the story from it being, summarized to me. I don't know. I feel like that was more of him looking at someone who, yeah, they were friends, they were close. Him being a brother was a big part of why they were able to get so close, but it never was a major point to me that was holding them together. He kind of just viewed him as someone who didn't work his way to the top and was just trying to make money off of Plainview, take advantage of Plainview, and that was kind of something that was just unacceptable to him. He would never be the one being taken advantage of. He always had to have the upper hand, and despite how much he liked the guy and was fond of him, that just was not going to fly. Um, yeah, I could kind of see why you would want to connect Cain and Abel. I just don't know it closely.
Yeah, I mean, I mainly fell apart because Cain and Abel are literally brothers, and these guys weren't.
Mhm.
But yeah, I also, in addition to what you said, I said I was also being a foreshadowing of how much this guy hates being what he perceives as double crossed or stabbed in the back. Which, when his son comes to him later in the film saying, "I want to start my own business," and he's like, "Fuck you, you're a bastard. I never loved you. You're not even mine. Get the fuck out of here,
No,
you
no,
fucking
no.
orphan."
He's worse than a bastard.
Worse than a bastard. Right, right. Oh, and often. Um. So yeah, there's that too.
Mm.
What do you think of the whole ending of this movie. Paul Dano's desperate plea for money, him selling out like a little bitch, and then ultimately getting murdered. Spoiler alert for a 13-year-old movie.
I thought it was one of those where it kind of just brings us right back around to just the messages. Everyone is the same. Everyone is just trying to do whatever it takes to succeed and find success in whatever means necessary. And, Paul Dano's character throughout the movie was having these fake exorcisms to, get people to believe that God gave him this power and he was some prophet from God. And just like Plainview, he was just trying to take advantage of everyone around him just to put himself ahead. And, he had this moral high ground above him this whole movie. And quickly Plainview just tore that down, just like he tears down everyone else around him. I wish I could make a more thematic connection to that, something a little more overarching, but that's basically what I saw.
Yeah, he was certainly doing his best to cling to his morals, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of things I want to say here that could be again brought back to this whole God thing because I mean, God and religion is a huge part of this movie. Literally because Paul Dano is a fucking priest, but also I think thematically, despite how poorly I explained myself previously, but you know, Paul Dano's character, God failed, or religion, I should say, religion failed him just the same way as it as it failed Daniel Plainview. He's
Hmm.
they're both in awful spots for competitive or for varying reasons, but they've both been failed by the system they put themselves in, both with religious connotations. And Paul Dano went to, I don't know why on earth he would go to Daniel Plainview, a man who clearly fucking hates him and rubbed his face in mud, but he chose to go to someone that he thought he had some level of familiarity with. But the thing is, Daniel Plainview had gained so much power and influence since that time that he was willing to go along with his bullshit when he was coming up, and he needed to, but that wasn't a necessary part of his personage
Yeah.
at the point in time which Paul Dano actually approached him. Like they had strayed so far, and the power that Daniel Plainview what wielded had gained so much that he could literally just fucking kill him.
Yeah. I thought that was just a beautifully acted scene throughout.
Oh, it's
From the
amazing.
second Dano comes in to that final shot of just Plainview sitting there next to him. I thought that was just one of, if not the most powerful moments in that movie.
Seeing also one of my favorite little bits from that scene is watching Daniel Day Lewis stand up and be all super fucking drunk, shaky kneed, walking for a few
Hmm.
steps, which was ridiculous. Um, it's like I I love the scene so much. I love it so much because there's so much that goes on with it. You have this guy with Dano who'd been clinging to this thing. He'd been clinging to I forget the name of the guy, but his property. Something with a B, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I forget too.
Blandy?
Blandy sounds right.
Blandy. You've been clinging to Blandy's strip, as I think they called it, for years. I mean decades. It probably 20 years. Thereabouts, maybe 15. Tough to doesn't matter. I've
Hmm.
been clinging to that as like as this modicum of hope, this small thing he could fall back on, a safety net of sorts. And he goes there to cash in on it, this once like prized possession, and not only is Plainview not fucking interested, He forces him to sell out his entire belief system, and then tells him he already took what he wanted from it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That everything it had, the only reason it had value in the first place, has already been decimated from it.
That was brutal. That was just so brutal.
And then just strikes him down at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Just the ultimate display of power he has over him. Just he knows he controlled him, from the start, and just was never going to let up that control, and just crushed him in the end.
Yeah. It's. I'm gonna try on the fly to make another religious metaphor out of this. Dano acts as a priest. He acts as a mouth of God, but he has no actual bearing on anything that's happening. Plainview's pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm.
Plainview's not literally God, but he certainly is in this situation the God character.
He viewed himself as that by the end.
Yeah, but also like in a metaphorically literal sense, like Dano had been holding on to this thing out of hope, and he'd been a mouthpiece for this thing, but at the end of it, he had none of the power. He was lying through his teeth, and everything that he tried to be and wanted to be, an influencer and a gainer of following, or really what that is just a gainer of power. Fucking Plainview did, and he took the only thing he had to fall back on right from under his feet, because Dano was a false prophet, fucking bitch. He was a charlatan.
Yeah. Could never accept it, though, from the start.
No.
Neither of them really accepted themselves for who they really were.
Yeah, they were both in deep denial, just in different ends.
Mm-hmm. God, these two just... I get that this movie was essentially just those two back and forth for, the vast majority, but even if it's just they were so overpowering. Any scene either of them was in, which was the vast majority, just they overtook them completely. Like, they controlled the scenes they were in. And I feel like if there was more characters, and it wasn't just those two for the vast majority, they still would just be these just huge presences. And I'm really happy that both of these guys got a lot of recognition in this for the back and forth they had.
Yeah, this was great performances by both.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about this before we move on?
Yeah, I have some technical stuff.
Let me have it.
The scene where Dano approaches Plainview, and then he just beats him down, slaps him around, drags him through the mud, just throws mud in his face. All that was real. None of that was cut back. Daniel Day-Lewis really was slapping him every take, really dragged him by the hair. Those were genuine screams of pain from Dano. He really was choking on mud at the end. And, both of those guys just get so connected with their characters that they were both all about it. And you could tell just how well done that scene was. I don't want to say that I wouldn't have noticed if, they shorted the slaps or, had some just tricks to make it work, but it came through in the end. And then some other just simple technical stuff, like the when they filled up those barrels with dynamite to put out the well fire. That's still to this day. Well, maybe not to this day, but that is how they had to put out well fires. Every time, set off an explosion to suck the oxygen out of the area, and that was the only way to really cap them and get them under control. And that was really cool to see, just the second they were opening up those dynamite crates, that was like, oh, well, that's what they're doing. And that was just really cool to watch.
I appreciate all of these things.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving them mention.
Yeah, no problem. Any other things you want to mention about this?
Not in particular. No, not really. I think I know people might be turned off by the incredibly lengthy runtime, but fuck, I think this movie is paced so well, it really goes right on by. But that could just be me. I love this movie. Are you ready to give it a star rating out of 5?
I am. I'm gonna give this 3.5 stars.
I'm gonna go slightly above. I'm gonna give it 4.
Ooh,
Love this
that
movie.
fits. You are a big fan.
Yeah, it tracks. Shall we move on to your selection, beautiful boy?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, this was your. Actually, hold on. Let me read off the facts, and then I'll hand it over to you. Beautiful Boy from 2018, starring Steve Carell, Maura Tierney, Jack Dylan Glazer, and somehow doesn't mention Timothée Chalamet. Weird. He's in the movie a lot. It
He's
is
the main character.
yeah, some might say. Directed by Felix von Geingen, written by Luke Davies and Felix von Groeningen, and a few other people, but whatever.
Mhm.
It's based on the best-selling pair of memoirs from a father and son duo. Named their characters are the names of the people in real life, David and Nick Sheff. It was nominated for a single Golden Globe, which let me pull up who that was because I didn't think to do that earlier. Timothée Chalamet for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. It had an estimated budget of 25 million and cumulative worldwide gross of 16.6 million. So not a
Wow.
success.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I knew it wasn't a commercial success. I didn't know it was a commercial failure. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. I didn't realize it lost $8.5 million. That's not good.
Such a shame.
Wow. All right. Corwin, tell us about what you thought of this movie.
Yeah, so this was a movie that I hadn't seen going in. I'm a huge fan of Timothée Chalamet, and I really want to go back and finish watching his filmography. So this was the top of the list. So when we kind of jumped on having to pick movie titles really off the top of our heads, this was literally just the first film on my list, and went with it. Wow, this is a film that breaks you down. This is just so much of an emotional roller coaster. It's one of those where it is just up and down throughout. It tears you down. You get these little glimpses of hope. You're really starting to feel for these guys, and feel this pride and devotion to their performances, and then everything just collapses around you, and you're back to just you feel ashamed of the characters. Like, you feel the situations they're in, you feel for them, and you're in it. You're right there with them. And I thought both Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet aced these performances. Very different acting styles from both Paul Dano and Daniel Day-Lewis, but equally moving roles. A little, well, I want to say a little. For most of the movie, it's exceptionally less. What's the right word I'm looking for? I don't want to say powerful, because that's not it. Intensive might be it. But regardless, just I didn't realize it was going to be this much of a downer type movie. So I apologize for that. Yeah, I'm not going to apologize. Fuck that. It's a good movie.
Well, we have competing takes because I fucking hated this.
Really?
Not only that, I'm kind of mad you made me watch this. I really did not
Really?
enjoy this movie at all.
Why not?
Um,
Let's hear the hot takes.
all right, so wow, where to start with this? At no point did it give you a reason to care for anything that was happening. So my thing about sad movies is my thing that also goes for happy movies. I understand that certain things that happen are empirically sad, just the way I understand that some things that happen are empirically happy. Hallmark has built an entire television channel, which is insane from a greeting card company, around taking just like blankly generic happy moments and putting them on screen because people recognize them as happy and enjoy that feeling. This is the same thing, but with sadness. I don't give a shit about Timothée Chalamet's character or Steve Carell's character, not because like this isn't a sad story, and I'm sure it's a very sad story, and I'm sure that the book does a way better job of telling you about them. But the thing is, like, I don't know anything about these fucking dudes outside of like the fact that apparently, I guess Timothée Chalamet's character like liked writing at some point and is also a halfway decent artist. But like that's not anything. Like there was the character development was negative. All this movie cared about was that you understood Timothy Chalamet was on drugs, and Steve Carell was kind of sad about that, but was trying to do the right thing. And I get the situation is sad. I don't fucking care. I just don't. In addition, this is a very fine point, but in addition to that, I thought that the makeup in this film was ludicrous. Timothy Chalamet came out of every meth binge looking flawless. Like
not quite. But go
outside
ahead,
of his teeth a little bit, near like only in the last 20 minutes. And the track marks that again they only show in the last 20 minutes, which is bizarre because he's wearing short sleeves like all the time. Like his face is like in perfect condition, like the whole time.
Well,
I'm like, why don't you have pimples and shit?
As far as the track marks go, I thought that was they did mention it in the movie how that wasn't the heroin wasn't something that he moved on to until he went to college.
Which also, fuck that college scene. The fact that he sat there and read a Bukowski poem, which, oh my god, I hate that so much. Bukowski is the fucking poster child of edgy teenage bullshit. And if you like Bukowski, you fucking suck. You wear all black and think about how the world hates you and God's real, but he hates you, but you're an atheist and that doesn't make any sense because you're a fucking edgy teenage loser. And not only that, but the whole class was nodding along. Oh my god, I hated that scene so much. And he's sitting there with a smoke smile. Like,
have you never been around a group of teenagers that all are just blindly following that edgy teenage, rhetoric? That's exactly how they would have acted in that situation because they all think that way.
Just made me sad.
You are a rolling stone of just hatred with this movie. you got yourself in a mood and I could totally see you just crossing your arms, looking at the screen, just going, "Nope, this ain't it. Nah, fuck this. This movie fucking sucks." 0.3 stars. I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed this movie. Yeah, okay, you could get, with the makeup where I thought I noticed it getting worse throughout the movie, as the use of meth and the other drugs increased, so did they made the skin more pale. He lost weight. Timothy Chalamet, they shot all the later scenes first. They basically shot it in reverse order. And they had Chalamet come into this after losing 25 pounds, which, if you know what Timothy Chalamet normally looks like, he's not
Skinny
exactly
dude.
a guy that can lose 25 pounds out of nowhere. So I did notice those things. I thought it was, fine. It wasn't anything like The Wire where you see these guys just completely fucked up and you see the actual side effects of long-term meth and heroin use.
Which is funny because Andre Royo is in this movie.
Right. I noticed that.
And I was like, is that so fucking Bubbles?
Yeah. I was like, wow, Bubbles got himself together. I'm proud of that guy.
Like, is all Andre Royo here to do is tell us about the dangers of meth?
Yeah, right. I don't know. I thought this film was a really well done introspective on the relationship a father has with his son, and the relationship that they have when you're going through those that part of your life where you are an edgy teen and what's best and you're just going around trying to do everything for yourself and you hate your parents, they're all wrong and all that. And I can't say that I've experienced the kind of addiction issues that Timothy Chalamet, Nick Jeff went through. But yeah, I mean, I went through the teenage and college years. I know, some parts of that and was able to relate to, a degree with what was going on. And I connected really well to these characters. It was something I thought both of these guys did a tremendous job displaying that. It wasn't a perfect movie by any means, but I really just straight up think you're fucking wrong. I thought this was really well done. I am just so pleased with the performances of both, and yeah, I think this is a relationship movie, and it was a beautiful relationship. And so what if they
Um,
read fucking shitty poetry? Get over it.
First off, if you have ever read Charles Bukowski, I hate you. And that's not true because everyone should read Charles Bukowski to know why he sucks. But moving forward, I think seeing how Steve Carell's character reacts to his contact points with his son is really interesting. I genuinely
Mhm,
think that is probably the best part of this movie because if you've never had to deal with this type of situation, which I'll say, I don't know, 95% of the world hasn't, thankfully, although that number is probably getting smaller every day.
yeah.
Thanks, opioid crisis. Um, then like I don't know how I would react if like my son was like, "Dad, I need $300," and like I don't see him
Mhm,
very often, and maybe if I give him $300, he'd stay. So like I found the actual like decision making process of how Steve Carell was handling the whole situation to genuinely be interesting, and it
mhm.
was one of the only things keeping me along for the ride.
I thought it was
Uh,
very genuine.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like, you go into a lot of movies and you want these characters to be making perfect decisions because you can look at it objectively and you can see what is, the correct thing to do, the incorrect thing to do, and I thought this was, a really good way of showing that when you're this emotionally connected, you don't know what the right thing to do is. You don't know if the right thing is to, bring them in, put them under your wing, support them, maybe let them be independent, figure it out on their own, or just cut them out and force them to face the reality of their situation. Um, and I mean, addiction is just such a powerful disease to have. And you see these signs throughout the movie where they talk about, the main points of what it's like on a NA and AA, where, this isn't something you control. This isn't something that you can cure. This is a disease you fight one day at a time. And the terms that all of these characters come to face throughout the movie is, you know, they said this in the movie where, the one lady was saying, "Oh, we have an 85 or an 80% success rate." And then later on, another doctor goes and said, "No, it's in the single digits. This is the reality of people don't just get better." And wow, I don't remember where I was trying to take this point.
It's
Um,
okay.
you ever
To
just
go
start a sentence and just hope you figure it out?
Oh, like 90% of the sentences I say. To go back to that one scene you were talking about though, where the woman was like, "We have an 80%." She said the line was something like, Steve Carell was like, "What's your success rate?" And the woman said, "On the high end, like 75%, on the low end, I don't even remember what she said, like something like
25%.
25%." And Kel and I had to pause the movie and go, "What the fuck is she talking
Yeah.
about?"
What
Because
does that
I
mean?
nothing. It means nothing. If I was
Um,
Steve Carell, I would have left. I would have been like, "No, this is garbage talk. You are giving me
yeah,
the garbage talk."
but you look at these people and they say, "Hey, we can fix your son." And that is the only thing he wants in the world, and he's gonna believe him. It's just one of those things where you want that to be the reality, and it may not be, but you're gonna believe it anyway because that helps you sleep at night. But yeah,
I
there
did.
was there were some things that just there was one point where I had to pause the movie because I just like that I just got so taken out of it. When I think it's when Timothy Chalamet's character Nick Chef comes back, like high for the first time, or he comes back to the house at some point, and um, the father, Steve Carell, just starts screaming, and I couldn't hear anything other than Michael Scott, and I
Yeah,
had to stop the movie and just laugh to myself for a minute.
Kel was also laughing at that scene.
Oh man, I get why Steve Carell, Post Office is really just these, you know, mellow, toned down characters, just very laid back, very, contempt, all that. Because anything more than that, and it's just no one else is going to be able to see anything other than Michael Scott.
Yeah, I actually, I would like to plug the movie Foxcatcher for that reason. Phenomenal film that doesn't
Oh,
feel
love
like
that
Steve
movie.
Carell in the slightest. Um,
Visually, it helps that they do a lot to make him not really look like Steve.
Yeah, a
Carell.
lot of prosthesis, which looks great, actually.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think about their choice to end the movie halfway through and then go, haha, nope?
I liked it. I actually did like it. I kind of was like, wow, this was a quick little movie. I wasn't really paying attention to time, and you know what? I like that it kind of grounded it because that's what happens. Like perhaps people aren't happy go lucky after a single arc and everything goes back to normal and there's a happy ever after ending. That's not reality, and I'm really glad that this film was able to portray that in a impactful way.
I like the idea in theory.
Hmm.
But the problem is I hated this movie so much that like by the hour mark when this happens, I was like, oh thank God. I was like, it has to have been like an hour and 40 minutes. And I paused the movie to see where the timer was, and it said one
Hmm.
hour and like 6 minutes in, and I was like, no, no. Um, and then
uh,
it's like he's gonna get hooked on drugs again. Like I was thinking to myself, like if I was in the theater, I'd have been like getting ready to leave because I've been like,
mhm.
yes, it's been the hour and a half that I thought this would be, and it was like, nope, hour left. Um, what do you think
To be
about
fair,
Steve
that
Carell
that
doing
that I
blow?
did that at a point in There Will Be Blood because that
Uh,
movie is fucking long.
I know, but I love it. What do you think about the scene of Steve Carell doing blow?
I thought I really liked it, both from the way they portrayed it and the action itself. Wanting to connect to his son and know what he's going through and have that experience because immediately preceding this, he was talking with the doctor who gave him the real life numbers and the real life prognosis, and you know knowing that he wasn't going to be able to connect to his son and understand what he was going through unless he experienced it was I could easily see a father doing that to be able to help his son better, and I like the scene through and through. I don't. mm, I want to hold my tongue.
I think I would have liked it more if it had come up again in any way later on. I think the scene in of
Yeah.
itself is fine. My only issue is that it didn't get brought up, or you didn't even get like a reaction from Steve Carell
Hmm.
about like how it felt verbally anyway. Like, because
Yeah.
the next scene is him just like pass out on the floor, like getting up and then like going about his business. Like it wasn't it, and that I think that's like a good microcosm for like how I feel about this whole movie. Is like I'm sure the story is great, and I'm sure the book does a lot better of a job conveying it. I wasn't happy with the filmmaking of it because you don't get like I think a better version of this film is a version in which Steve Carell is a lot more of the guiding force of this film in its structure, because you don't even really get it until like halfway through. At least I didn't like he is a freelance writer, like and does interviews and shit, like tells stories. Because there was a brief moment in the beginning where his son was like, "How's New York?" And Steve Carell was like, "Good, I had a good interview." And my dumb ass thought he was talking about a fucking job interview.
Hmm.
And later on, he's talking about being a freelance writer, but he's doing interviews and shit, and he's writing stories. And oh, all right, now I'm getting he's a freelance reporter. And this would have been a way more interesting movie if they had it set up where Steve Carell was doing a lot of the like legwork for the narration by like interviewing doctors, the way that he did with that one doctor, or like interviewing uh, meth and heroin addicts, like he did with that one girl,
Hmm.
interviewing people in recovery, interviewing things like that, confronting like being literal narration where you get dialogue behind it, and then showing the Timothy Chalamet stuff. Because I thought there was just like this, it felt like there was this weird disconnect between the two stories being told. Like they never really came together in like a functional way. And that's the part that drove me nuts about it. Because the reason the movie felt so long to me, because this felt like a 4 hour long movie, is that the whole thing was just so disjointed. Like I didn't feel any real flow, and they made it kind of tough to tell when it was flashback moments. Like when they smoked that joint together, I Still am not sure if that was supposed to be present day or a flashback. Like, it was weird. And in part, it's because I'm also going to blame the makeup department for that too. Because if they made Timothée Chalamet look way more strung out, or at least accentuate the fact that he did all that weight loss, because it really, really was hard to tell because he's already skinny. Then it makes it a little bit more obvious. But like, it lessens it somewhat.
Yeah, I don't just wow, wow. Um,
Yes,
I completely disagree. I thought, your complaint is that it's not a different movie. Um,
my
I
complaint is that the way that
much
they chose to
prefer.
do it wasn't effective.
I think it's not effective in the story you wanted them to tell. I think it is effective in the story that they were trying to put on the screen, which is a father trying to save his son, not write an article about his son. So if this, was him writing a piece about drug addiction, like he does after the finish of the movie or towards the end of the movie, yeah, okay, I could get why they would want to show him more, taking this from a professional perspective, interviewing people, taking notes, getting these experiences. But in the film, he's just trying to, throughout the entire film, his only goal is to save his son and get him clean. And I feel like this wasn't him trying to work. This was just him desperately trying to connect and find ways to solve this problem. Um, and it was just a different way of approaching it. And I feel like the film would have been very, very different. And I don't think I would have connected to it much, anywhere close to the same way if this was, something more of like a spotlight where, the film Spotlight, where they're trying to write a story, not find the solution.
I'm not saying necessarily that he needs to be like literally writing a story and conducting these the full movie needs to be interviews. My problem is
That
like
he's not like bringing his profession into this, like his
no,
profession.
that there's no good narrative storyline that it's actually like going like there's no narration. It at all going on throughout the movie. It's just a series of Steve Carell having phone calls with his ex-wife and like trying to have conversations in diners with his son, and then his son just keep doing drugs and then calling his dad all sad and stuff. And it's like I get the fundamental point behind those things. I get that Steve Carell is a dad who doesn't know what to do, and that his son is is an addict, and that's not something that can just be solved. Addiction is a serious illness, but that can't be the only thing that because then it's just repetitive. Because with every phone call with Steve Carell to his ex-wife, where he's like, "I don't know, I failed," and she's like, "You didn't fail, it's okay. We're trying our best here." It's like every time that phone call happens, so that phone call happens like 4 times in the movie. It's like, "Yeah, I know. We get it." Like, the narrative part of the story can't be you saying to us, "I'm trying, this is hard," because we see that part of it. Like, that part we get just from the visuals. The part I wanna hear is I wanna hear the things that we're not getting the chance to see. I wanna hear Steve Carell running through, like, what are my options with a doctor? Kinda like what he did with The Thing, to give some weight behind the decisions he ultimately makes. Because I think that's the most interesting part of Steve Carell's character decision-wise is, like, what's he gonna do? How did he get that information? In addition to how is he coupling that with how to best care for his son? Because in the way I'm looking at it now, it's just like, I'm not giving you $300. You know why? I'll buy you food. Great choice. Great
Mhm.
choice. Totally makes sense. But then it doesn't work, and then it's just like, all right, we're doing a different thing next time. And it's like, how do you feel about that? Like how did him turning you away in that way make you feel? Like how uh, what did what do you know having come away from that, and what are you gonna learn to do next? Like, I wanna know how Steve Carell's emotions are through the movie that can be guided by information, because I'm not getting any of it. And the only part of Timothée Chalamet's character I'm getting is that addiction is hard, which, yeah, like, of course, again, very serious problem, very serious illness. But like outside of that, I think we get more from Timothy Chalamet's character because they give him a little bit of a backstory. Like he likes writing and he's something of a good artist, and like his dad saw potential in him when he was a kid. And he feels like he's failing his dad, and it's not the image that he wants. Like that's more. It's not a lot, but it's more. Um, but I just want there to be more of. I keep saying the word narrative, but I'll put it this way. I'm most upset that I didn't connect with this movie because I think that there's a better movie in the bones of this movie than what we got.
Um,
I'm
again,
not.
like I disagree, but I can't say I disagree because I felt the things you're saying you missed out on, but I'm not disagreeing with, yeah, there are things they could have done that would have made this a more compelling, widespread, something that more people would have been able to connect to.
Because
Which,
it's sorry, it's
you could say that about a lot of movies. Go ahead.
right. What I was about to say is it's not like a Hallmark movie in that like, look, Stacy, like no one gives a shit that like you bought a new house. That's not a whole movie.
Hmm.
Like fuck you. It's not that, where they're just like making it all feel good all the time. There's a story in this one. The fact like they have not just one book, they have two books. There's two
Yeah.
books. Um first for source info. So
And
like there's
again,
obviously a story here.
this one, it was more heavily based on the son's book, Tweak, than it was on the father's book, A Beautiful Boy. So I think that's why it may be focusing on more of the addiction and handling the addiction side of it than it is, Steve Carell's character, David, searching for these answers. But, it's one of those things where when you're making a, relatively, short film, 100, I think it was like 138 minutes, something like that. I don't
It's a
remember.
2 hour long movie.
Yeah. That's a lot of book to fit in there.
There's a
And
lot of book.
yeah, at the end of the day, it's just this is a movie that's more of a emotional experience than it is a narrative retelling. Um, and you connect to it or you don't, and you're getting both sides of it here.
Yeah, really. This is by far the most apart we've been on a film. It's not even close.
Yeah, like we are relatively within, half a point, 1 point for everything I think we've been within half a point for everything we've, seen so
Yeah.
far. I feel like we're gonna have a pretty distinct difference in scores at the end of this.
Well, before we get there, do you have any final takeaways or thoughts on the on Beautiful Boy?
Yeah, just the final thing. Every time I watch a Timothy Chalamet movie, um, he just strikes me as someone who is going to be just the actor of our generation. And I don't want to say that lightly. I genuinely think that he is able to portray emotion better than most anyone I've seen at his age. And I just can't wait to see him have, deeper and deeper roles, which is going to be hard because he's taken on some big ones so far. Um, again, I can't wait for Dune. Oh,
What's your favorite Timothy Chalamet movie so far?
um, Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, me too. Love that
I
fucking movie.
I that that movie just took me off my feet. I love that movie so much. I think I would pick it just because I want to talk about it, um, which may happen in the future. But spoiler alert: that is a perfect score in my book.
Yeah, no, I fucking love that movie. Ugh,
Mm.
so good. Oh, to be gay in Italy in the
Oh
80s.
yeah, that I just want to go back and live in 1985 in Northern Italy and just
Yep, just
oh
being Jewish and gay.
yep, that's all you need.
It's all you need in life. Yeah, I don't think I have anything left to say on the matter. I'm looking
Mhm.
through, see if I can find anything fun to bring up about it, but not really. The most interesting piece of trivia I could find here is the one that you mentioned, Timothy Chalamet losing his 25 pounds. Which again, my God, what 25 pounds did he have to lose? But yeah, no, I've said my piece. Shall we go to ratings then?
Yeah, I want to hear what your score was first.
All right. This is out of 5.
Yes.
Gonna give it a 1.
Wow. I'm gonna give it a 4. A solid 4. I love this movie.
Well, folks, take your viewings and let us know where you stand on this. We can be reached, as you may know, at JuicingPod on Twitter and juicethenumbers@gmail.com via the emails. We will announce what next Monday's films are going to be on the Thursday episode when we discuss the draft. Don't forget to listen to that episode before the draft so you can hear Corwin's mock drafts, as well as what we think might happen by ways of trades and other shenanigans. And yeah, anything left to say before we get out of here, Corwin?
Josh, you suck at watching movies. That's all I got.
I'll take it in stride. Well, until Thursday, y'all have a good one.
Bye.